Black the Name by D.B. Halpert. Narrated by the author, D.B. Halpert. Chapter 11. Pearl. A pressure pushes into Pearl's side, waking her, and Auburn's boot withdraws from the point of impact. His shadow casts down upon her, blocking out the shining sun's rays. Pearl straightens her back with a series of pops, and Auburn's gruff voice thrums into her ear. "Where's the creepy one?" "What are you talking about? She's right." Pearl stops, rubbing her eyes with one hand when placing her other where Elizabeth was the night before, finding the space empty. A second passes, and Pearl is frozen stiff in panic, with Elizabeth missing, before she shoots up to her feet. Lifting with her the blanket Auburn had laid upon them in the night, Pearl glares at the spot, saying, "Elizabeth, if you are doing that invisibility thing, stop it." Pearl stares like this for seconds, striking Auburn silent from confusion, before spinning around on her heel to face him, saying in jubilance to him, "Well, you are correct in saying she isn't here. But I don't know where she is. She's probably safe, though. These are nice people." Auburn's face remains cold and emotionless when he gestures to the door to explain to Pearl, "Ivliois in their elders are already in the structure again. He told me I should wake you and find if they're in yin. If we are to continue with we do Aldronic soon." "Oh, well, where do you suggest we start looking?" Pearl asks, spinning around, taking in the minor movements of the small town as the sun approaches noon. Pearl and Auburn turn suddenly when Elizabeth's familiar voice calls out to them, with a soft and confident tone woven into it that is new to their ears. "Pearl, Auburn, good morning." Both Auburn and Pearl look at Elizabeth approaching silently in shock of the transformation that had occurred since they had gone to sleep the night before. Beautiful and visibly soft, Elizabeth's sky blue hair is pulled back into a lovely braid, with a tiara of woven hair that joins in the back of her head with the rest of a single elvish braid that falls below her shoulders. Her hair, clean and drawn back, reveals Elizabeth's soft, almost powder white skin of her face glowing with a smile of confidence, for the first time showing itself completely to Pearl and Auburn. Large, pale, gentle, youthful eyes, easily seen, framed by a black lining on the eyelids, appear blank, without a pupil or iris in either, resting under Elizabeth's thin, just darker than sky blue eyebrows. Auburn and Pearl continue to stare at as Elizabeth walks towards them, holding two small linen bags. The pale brown of the linen rests against the daisy yellow of the loose sleeves that drape down Elizabeth's arms, growing in width from the shoulder to the wrist, with a pretty black lace sewn into the cuffs and the upper portion of the sleeve, where a small gap exists between the shoulders and the arms. Thin white strips of fabric hold the baggy sleeves to the torso of the coat, which only covers the upper half of Elizabeth's torso. Open, unable to be closed, the coat reveals beneath it a soft, flowing, nearly white tan vest shirt, tied with a bow at the collar and tucked into the waist beneath a pair of leggings that cover only halfway down the shin, colored a deep brown akin to the soil which makes Elizabeth's pale, bare ankles and feet seem even brighter white than usual. Seconds of walking bring Elizabeth to Auburn and Pearl's side, asking, "Are either of you hungry?" A question that shakes both of them from their gawking surprise. Closing her eyes tight for a second, Pearl opens them, thinking Elizabeth's clean, happy appearance to be a hallucination. A smile forms on her face as Pearl finds Elizabeth to actually be standing there, beautiful with a beaming smile on her face. Grabbing Elizabeth's shoulders, Pearl asks, "Where'd you go?" "Oh, a boy's dog woke me up, and he kind of offered me breakfast. His mother and his sister insisted they help me get cleaned up, and they offered me these clothes and a new nightdress," Elizabeth explained, turning to show a bundled, dark pink, almost purple cloth tucked partially in the back of her leggings. Pearl goes to speak, but stops, interrupted by the door beside her, opening, revealing the old elf Evelios stepping from within. Turning to the three gathered, the sagely man gives a nod, gesturing into the building. Stepping out of the way, Evelios lets Pearl, Elizabeth, and Auburn step through the door into the stump. The interior of the massive tree base is hollowed clean to create a single room. A small lantern hangs from the center of the ceiling, glowing a soft, heatless green. Illuminated with the green light, the round walls push into the room in several places, making shelves which hold containers of strange liquids and herbs. The room is filled with several old elven individuals standing around, going about their own work on various projects, on small desks spread along the walls. A single table stands in the center of the room, a solid block of wood that remains a part of the stump. Its deep red wood holding upon it Aldrin, sitting up, stretching various parts of his body for two elders which are observing him. As Pearl walks in, Aldrin's eyes immediately connect with hers, and turning to the men next to him, he gets nods and gestures of approval, ushering him to stand. Stepping quickly to Pearl's side, Aldrin lifts her in a big hug, saying with loud glee, "It is so good to see you." Pearl squirms in Aldrin's grasp, asking him with a gasp, her breath being squeezed from her by his tight hug, "What are you talking about?" Aldrin sets Pearl down, and with a curious look in his eye, he asks, in retort to her question, "How long has it been since I collapsed?" Pearl looks with a similar confused concern in her eyes, responding, "Less than 24 hours. Elizabeth steps from behind Pearl to the side of the staring contest of confused looks the moment Aldrin lifts his hand to his chin. Across Aldrin's body, Elizabeth notices obvious changes to the metal rig he wears as an exoskeleton. The joints appear reinforced, and while some of the attachments are missing, several new tubes connect the pieces of metal that extend along his arms and legs, circumventing the joints, which release a sound like that of a popping, followed by a quick release or inhalation of air through a minuscule hole with each of Aldrin's movements. Additionally, Elizabeth notices on Aldrin's chin a thin, untrimmed beard. So there was a time-lapsing effect. Aldrin strokes the thin beard, contemplating. "See, I was gone for 3 months, from my perspective." Pearl leans away from Aldrin, perplexed. "Gone?
Where?
Aldrin looks with worry to the elders, not sure how to respond to Pearl, with one of them responding in a lighter voice than Ivelios. The Wild Plain. A world very similar to ours, but infused with a far more powerful amount of life energy, to a very dangerous effect. Its creatures have evolved to be far more ferocious than those of our plane. I worked on my suit there, while a beautiful woman helped me with the corruption around my heart. Aldrin explains, interrupting the old man, pointing to the circular device that locks with the chest of the suit closed, which glows a gentle white. Pearl raises a hand to Aldrin with inquiry in her expression, asking,
So, you were gone for 3 months, which was actually just a day, where a woman helped you with your tinkering?
She pauses for a moment, letting her comment settle before continuing with a shrug.
Guess it isn't the weirdest thing you've said that turned out to be true. But so you know, 3 months passed between the time we left this plane of existence and now.
Aldrin smirks with contemplation, and turning to the elders, he expresses, We thank you. We are thankful for your generosity. Can you explain to us the quickest way to a port? We really would like to get back to our homes. Velios, from behind Aldrin, with Pearl and Elizabeth, responds, Chatel and Eredil, the scouts that brought you here, can show you the way. We need to contact the port to learn if anything in the world has changed that would affect us in any case. Auburn steps forward, finally adding his voice to the muffled mumble of the larger room within a hollowed stump. How soon can we expect that? The old man strokes his long, white beard, with a smile turning to the impatient Auburn. I can't blame you for being impatient. I will get everything ready. You should be able to leave in the morning.
Thank you,
Elizabeth exclaims, with a smile and a slight bow, before grabbing Pearl's wrists and pulling her from the room.
I can take you to meet Val and Neris.
The two girls whip from the room, leaving Avelios with a smile, and both Aldrin and Auburn with looks of confusion on their faces. The strange feeling of a slimy substance curls around Elizabeth's head when Pearl slows, stopping the two a short distance from the door. Looking at Pearl and her hand wet with a strange, viscous substance, Elizabeth asks, with a 13-year-old's gentle concern,
Why'd you stop?
Pearl looks at Elizabeth with a worried look that had never seen itself on her face. As she grabs her own wrists and, feeling the slime growing more disheartened, responds,
We need to talk.
Confused worry morph into Elizabeth's face, and her foot takes an uneasy, instinctive step back away from Pearl, asking,
Talk about what?
Pearl takes Elizabeth's hand, the strange substance enveloping the delicate, shaking fingers, and stepping in a way direction, she says,
Come, let's sit down.
Elizabeth follows, hesitantly sitting down against the tree away from Auburn and Aldrin, who emerge from the stump structure, walking with Avelios in the direction of his house. With Elizabeth seated, Pearl continues,
I want you to know I do not blame you. But when you tricked the gods in the plane of undeath, they were not happy, as you could imagine. They caught me before I could make it through the gateway.
Pearl continues to grab at her wrist as the thoughts going through her head are more painful
being said than she thought they would be. Continuing with tears in her eyes, she says, I thought I was going to die. Pearl! Elizabeth stands, giving Pearl a comforting hug. I was given a choice. Perform one of their tasks, or die there and then. Pearl bites her trembling lower lip. They explained that I would be blessed to make their task easier, transformed into a physical embodiment of their servants. I didn't think it would happen so quickly. I thought I would have time enough to explain it before we got to Blackgate without any physical changes before then. Elizabeth grabs Pearl's shoulder and, looking into Pearl's crying eyes, explains, Aldrin said that you all would help me with the task if I were the one to carry the burden. We will help you with the task set before you. What is important now is that you are still alive. Pearl's face shifts with a sniffle to a smile, responding to a kind and caring grin on Elizabeth's face, who, taking Pearl's wrist, again pulls the two women into a soft jog, exclaiming, I still want you to meet Val and Neris. The two run for a handful of minutes, stamping across the soft dirt. All around them are the familiar sounds of a living community, the ping of metal being formed under a hammer's strike, the crack of wood being split by an axe, the shearing of leather being stretched and to dry, and the chatter of conversations struck by the elves who call this place home, most of which converse about the strange outsiders running through their town. At the end of the path, Elizabeth pulls Pearl along and waits At the end of the path, Elizabeth pulls Pearl along what waits a small, quiet cottage. An old wooden door sits open in the doorway, revealing a young elven girl only 2 years older than Elizabeth, with long blonde hair, walking from within, dirt smudged across all of her form, drinking from a water skin. Elizabeth calls to the young elf, who hasn't noticed the two women approaching yet. Val! Val looks from the swig of water and, seeing Elizabeth and the stranger, calls back, Beth! Before running and to the approaching girls, wrapping Elizabeth in a big hug, and taking Elizabeth's shoulders, looks her up and down, saying with a smirk, See? I knew that outfit would look great on you. What brings you back? I wanted Pearl to meet you. Throwing the water skin to the ground and placing one arm akimbo, Val turns to Pearl with a judgmental look in her eyes, and after a second of scanning the blue outfit, looks to Pearl's face with a smile, saying, It is nice to meet you. Elizabeth told me a lot about you. Pearl gives a bow, responding, Thank you for the breakfast. Pearl's words strike Val with an idea. Throwing her hand from her hip, pointing a single finger to the sky, she exclaims, Wait! Elizabeth never said when you were going to depart. Would you like to stay for dinner? Elizabeth responds quickly, not seeing Pearl's worry. Sure. Well, come inside. Mama would probably like to meet you, Pearl. And then you can help me out in the garden, Beth. Val says, turning back to the house, taking a step in that direction after picking up the water skin. Elizabeth follows Val, gesturing to Pearl to join them. Hesitantly, Pearl steps behind Elizabeth
entering the quaint home. To her immediate left, through the door, stands within a small kitchen a beautiful elven woman with light brown hair tied up in a bun, checking the contents of a kettle boiling over a small fire. Turning to the group entering behind her, the woman's face already holds a caring smile, and seeing Elizabeth's face, she speaks.
Welcome back, Elizabeth. Who's this?
Val responds faster than Elizabeth can build the words and the breath within her chest.
This is Pearl, the friend Beth told us about this morning. Is that so?
The woman responds, turning to her daughter. Turning to Pearl with a nod, she continues.
It is a pleasure to meet you.
Looking down the hall, Val's mother gestures.
If you would like to get cleaned up, Elizabeth told us of your travels. The washroom is just there. The girls would probably get you some water from the well and wash your outfit if you would like. Dinner is in another few hours, if you would like to stay for that.
Pearl looks in surprise at the open generosity being shown to her, and with a nod she begins walking toward the washroom, dumbfounded, only being able to mutter,
Thank you.
In response. Elizabeth and Val follow through the small hall, grabbing from the washroom the two buckets they had used earlier, leaving Pearl alone in the small room with just a small tub to keep her company. A handful of minutes pass with Pearl standing alone in the small room before Elizabeth and Val return with the buckets, sloshing full of cold well water. Val gives a bow, asking Pearl,
Would you like us to wash your clothes?
Pearl shakes her head, responding,
I only have the one pair. I would have nothing to wear while they dried.
Val smirks.
Don't worry, we have a drying box. Papa used it mostly for meat, but Mom and I have learned to use it to speed up the drying process on laundry.
Pearl looks at Elizabeth, confused for a split second, only to have her young friend's smile return to her. Finally, Pearl begins removing her clothes, sending Elizabeth and Val from the room with her outfit, leaving her to wash. Clothes in hand, the two young women step from the house around to a wooden tub with two washing boards within. In the tub, soapy water waits, still splashing with bubbles when Pearl's jacket slaps its surface. Watching Val throw Pearl's jacket and blouse into the soapy water, Elizabeth releases Pearl's trousers to join the tops in the water, and the two girls begin scrubbing. The slippery, soapy water is fragrant with a flowery scent that infuses itself into the threads of the garments, while the dirt and dust seep out, making the water black. Val hums softly while the two grind the clothes clean, but stopping after a moment, she asks Elizabeth,
So that is Pearl?
Elizabeth stops, scrubbing for a moment to look at Val, unsure what she is asking.
Yeah? Why?
Val shrugs, continuing to scrub a blood stain from the jacket.
I don't know. She seemed a bit more hesitant than you made her out to be.
Elizabeth quickly responds, almost in an unnecessary defense of Pearl.
She thought she was going to die. She's just uneasy.
Val leans away, unsure if she said something wrong, defending herself.
I didn't mean anything by it. You and she have been through things that I couldn't have even imagined before meeting you.
Elizabeth notices the worried defense in Val's response, and dropping her head, she apologizes.
Sorry, Val. I didn't mean to snap at you. It's all right. You obviously have a great respect for her. That is nice. The two scrub Pearl's clothes for a minute more in silence before Elizabeth speaks again, holding up a dripping clean garment. So, how is it you said you try these fast enough Pearl didn't need another set of clothes? Papa's drying hut. This way. Standing and wringing water from the many pieces of fabric, Val steps away, gesturing with a nod for Elizabeth to follow. The two walk around the small house, where they find a small structure in size, similar in size to, but no larger than, an outhouse, with an extension attached to its back, only half the height of the structure. Val opens the building, revealing within two metal walls with several metal mesh shelves attached to each. Laying the clothes on the shelves, Elizabeth watches Val step to the structure's attachment. Opening an extra compartment, Val places firewood within, lighting it, which causes smoke to rise from the chimney above the main structure. Joining Elizabeth again, Val puts her hand to her hip, proudly closing the door. There. Should be dry in just about an hour. Val stated. Pearl's clothes are dry after an hour, which is several minutes longer than Pearl wishes it would have been taken. But clean and flower-scented, Pearl joins Elizabeth, Val, Nerys, and their mother for dinner, before stepping once more into the village to make their way to Velios's abode. Morning comes again with the soft sounds of chirping birds and the low murmur of active movement through the small town. Pearl and Elizabeth yawn as they stand waiting with Aldrin, his suit whirring with a mechanical vibration rumbling through it, and Auburn stood calmly, leaning against the wood of the elder elf Velios's house. The four are listening to the scout that brought Aldrin to the town, Chatel. A combination of the blessing of Archangel and the fey magics of our ancestors allow us to live in relative peace. But beyond the fairy ring, you will find this forest not as hospitable as our small town has been. If we encounter anything, the best course of action is to run. The bestial humanoids in this region don't hold any difference in their tongues for the flesh of beast or man, and will not hesitate in eating you alive. The trip to Aer Falmar, should only take us 10 days if we keep a constant pace. Pulling something from his bag, Chatel offers Elizabeth a small, old pair of boots before explaining. We shouldn't risk slowing to find soft pathways for you to follow us. These were my daughters. Take them. Not sure how grateful she should feel, Elizabeth blankly nods, taking the worn leather boots, and having a quick seat, she slides her sore, dirty, small, delicate feet into the soft, fabric-lined interior of the boots. Standing, feet covered, Elizabeth finds comfort that she had forgotten, hugging her feet. And in an instant, she finds herself wrapped around the man, saying, "Thank you," with the soft smile that only a father knows how to make. The man pats Elizabeth's back, happy that she is so appreciative. After Elizabeth pulls herself from him, once more joining Pearl's side, Chatel continues. Is there anything else you need to do before we leave our village? And he pauses for a second, after which he concludes. Then let's get moving. The further we get before nightfall, the better. The group of 6 begin walking eastward, with the intent to leave the town.
but they only get a short few steps before a voice calls to them from the edge of the main clearing, running to them from the south. Val's voice stops the group as she calls to them.
Wait! Don't go yet!
The six heads turn to face the charging girl, with next to her, trying to keep pace, an even younger boy, Neris. With the group's eyes on the two young elves approaching, Chattel steps to the side of the group. They approach from squatting down, arms extended, waiting for a hug. A moment later, finds the man's children in his arms. Val explaining through heavy puffs of breathing attempts.
Mama wanted you to take this with you,
she said, holding forward two cloth bundles, mimicked by Neris, who also holds two, albeit smaller bundles himself. Chattel takes the bundles, giving them to the four individuals he is to escort, and Val steps to Elizabeth, giving her a hug, saying,
"Take care of yourself, okay? And write, or come visit if you find your home. Or, are you wearing my old boots?"
A look of worry goes across Elizabeth's face with the tone of Val's accusation settled when Val continues.
"That's awesome. I thought Papa disposed of them. I'm glad you got them."
All right, Val. We need to be going. Tell your mama I will be home before the next moon. Chattel's voice breaks Val from Elizabeth, and turning from the two young individuals, the group of six begin again toward the eastern edge of town. Farewells are heard for a few moments of walking before coming to a stop as the children turn, running back south to deliver their father's message.